Wouldn't you know it, Saskatoon just set another all-time price record. The benchmark price reached $448,400 in June, even though new listings jumped up almost 17%. So why are prices still rising? Because in spite of that 17% jump in listings, Saskatoon has only 1.56 months of housing supply. Inventory remains far below normal, and June was one of the strongest sales months we have seen in years. But the market is not moving the same way in every price range, property type, or community. Today, I'm going to be breaking down the June market stats and what they mean for you. I'm Conor, Palendat, Realtor with Better Real Estate Group, and if you need a top producing team to help secure your dream home or sell your greatest asset, all of my contact info is in the description below. Let's dive in. Let's begin with Saskatoon because the June numbers tell us a lot about where this market may be heading during the second half of 2026. Saskatoon recorded 589 residential sales in June. That was up 2.6% compared with June of last year, and it was 22% above the 10-year average for the month. That last number is the one I want you to remember. We are simply not comparing this market with 1 week or one unusual year. We are seeing sales activity that remains well above normal historic levels. Year-to-date sales are down about 3% from 2025, but they're still roughly 12% above the 10-year average. So when you hear that sales are slightly below last year, that does not mean the market is slow. Last year was already very strong. The bigger story is supply. There were 920 new listings in June, which was up nearly 17% year over year. At first glance, that sounds like good news for buyers. More listings should mean more selection, less competition, and slower price growth. But that is not what happened. Even with the increase in new listings, total residential inventory finished the month at 919 properties. That was down about 2% from last year and 43% below the 10-year average. In other words, homes are coming onto the market, but buyers are absorbing them almost as fast as they appear. Saskatoon finished June with only 1.56 months of supply. A balanced market is often considered somewhere around 4 to 6 months of supply. At 1.56 months, Saskatoon remains firmly in seller's market territory. Now, that does not mean every home receives 10 offers. It means the overall market still has far more demand than available supply, especially for well-priced detached homes in popular neighborhoods. The benchmark price reached a record $448,400. That was up 4.4% from June 2025 and up from the previous record set in May. The detached home benchmark reached $520,900, up 5% year over year. The semi-detached benchmark was $543,000, up 4%. Townhouses reached $371,000, also up 4%. And apartment-style condos remained the most affordable major category with a benchmark price of $263,000, up 4% from last year. So price growth is not limited to one small part of the market. It is showing up across detached homes, townhouses, condos, and most of the major housing categories. However, sales activity is shifting. Detached sales were up 9% in June, while townhouse sales were down 17%, and apartment sales were down about 3%. Part of that may reflect buyer preference, part of it may reflect what was available, and part of it may reflect affordability because buyers are now stretching into higher price ranges to secure the house they want. The year-to-date sales chart also shows more activity above $600,000 and $700,000 than we saw during the same period last year. At the same time, sales below $400,000 have declined. That does not mean demand disappeared at the lower end. It likely means there are fewer suitable homes available at those prices. This is an important distinction. A drop in sales does not always mean a drop in demand. Sometimes buyers simply cannot purchase what is not available. Average days on market across Saskatoon were 23 days in June, but again, that number can be misleading. The best homes may sell in a few days. or the same day, while overpriced or poorly presented properties can sit for several weeks. That creates two different markets happening at the same time. A good home in a desirable area at the right price may still receive immediate attention. Now let's move just north of Saskatoon to Martensville. Martensville recorded 22 sales in June. That was up more than 22% from last year, although year-to-date sales remain about 6% lower. There were 40 new listings, up almost 74% from June of last year. Inventory increased to 30 homes, which was 50% higher than last year. And that sounds like a major increase, but context matters. Inventory was still about 60% below the 10-year average. Martensville had only 1.36 months of supply, which is even tighter than Saskatoon. The benchmark price reached $453,200, up 2.9% year over year. The detached benchmark was $546,000. The townhouse benchmark was $252,800, while apartment-style condos had a benchmark price of $269,000. Martensville also had an average market time of only 20 days, so even though more homes came onto the market, conditions remain tight. For buyers, Martensville can still offer value compared with some parts of Saskatoon, but it should not be viewed as a soft market. You still need to be prepared when a good property appears. For sellers, more listings mean your presentation and pricing matter more than they did when there was almost no competition. You may still have an advantage, but buyers now have a few more options to compare. Lastly, let's look at Warman. Warman had 30 residential sales in June, which is down about 6% from last year, and year-to-date sales were down roughly 8%. There were 47 new listings, up almost 7% year over year. Inventory increased to 61 properties, which was also up about 7%. Warman finished the month with just over 2 months of supply. That gives buyers a little more choice than Saskatoon or Martensville, but it still represents a seller's market. The benchmark price reached $538,500, up 5% from last year. The detached benchmark climbed to $577,000, up 4%. Two-story homes had a benchmark price above $610,000. Townhouses came in at $431,000, while apartments had a benchmark of $291,000. One interesting point is that Warman's average sale price was lower than last year, even though the benchmark price increased. This is why the average price can be misleading. The average can change based on the mix of homes that happen to sell in 1 month. The benchmark price does a better job of tracking the value of a typical home over time. Warman remains more expensive than Martensville and Saskatoon on a total residential benchmark basis that reflects its housing mix, newer construction, larger detached homes, and the type of properties that tend to sell there. Homes took an average of 30 days to sell, which gives buyers slightly more breathing room, but attractive detached homes can still move much faster. So what does this mean for all of you? For buyers, more listings are coming onto the market, but that has not yet created a balanced market. You may have more options than you had earlier in the spring, but you should not assume prices are about to fall. The strongest strategy is to have financing ready, know your target areas, and understand the recent comparable sales before the right home appears. You do not need to panic buy, but waiting for a large drop in prices has not worked well in this market. For sellers, conditions remain favorable, but buyers are becoming increasingly selective. Pricing too high can still cost you time and money. The homes that sell the best are clean, well prepared, easy to show, and priced close enough to market value to create urgency. For investors, low supply continues to support both resale value and rental demand, but the purchase price matters more now than it did a few years ago. You need to look closely at cash flow, financing costs, property taxes, insurance, maintenance, and realistic rent. Do not rely only on future appreciation to make a deal work. And for anyone moving to the Saskatoon area, the main takeaway is that Saskatoon, Warman, and Martensville are all competitive, but they offer different options. Saskatoon gives you the widest range of neighborhoods, housing styles, and price points. Warman tends to offer newer and larger detached homes, but often at a higher price. Martensville may offer a lower entry point in some categories, but its inventory remains extremely limited. The right choice depends on your commute, budget, school needs, lifestyle, and how much space you want. To recap, the June numbers confirm that the Saskatoon area market remains strong. Sales are running above historic averages, inventory remains well below normal, and benchmark prices continue to rise. We are seeing more listings, but we are not yet seeing enough supply to give buyers control of the market. The biggest mistake right now is relying on general headlines. Your strategy should depend on your price range, property type, and neighborhood. A condo buyer, a first-time buyer, and someone purchasing a $700,000 detached home are operating in 3 very different markets. If you're thinking about buying, selling, investing, or moving to Saskatoon, my contact information is always below. Reach out and I can help you build a plan based on your situation, your timeline, and the part of the market you are entering. And if this video is helpful, give it a like and make sure to subscribe for more Saskatoon real estate updates, neighborhood guides, and practical advice. Thanks for watching and have a fantastic day.